audio on demand from Vision Christian Media.
Exploring faith and the future. Neil Johnson and Bible teacher Dr. Camille Majdali.
An important series we are talking about when it comes to Christian teaching, the standard, accepted teaching of the church. And we've noted in earlier episodes that the Nicene Creed encapsulates and distills an understanding of Christian teaching, going back to the 4th century and summarising biblical doctrine. Let's get to the next part of our summary of this Nicene Creed, where we've covered in earlier sections God the Father, the person of Christ, the work of Christ, and the sacrifice of Christ. But we then move into, Camille, post-crucifixion, and we have the resurrection of Christ.
All right, let's read this section again that has the gospel in it. Nicene Creed. He was crucified for us under Pontius Pilate. He suffered and was buried. The third day he rose again, according to the Scriptures. All right, so as I've shared, this is a summary of the gospel. Christ crucified, suffered, buried, rose again. You can find this in 1 Corinthians 15, verses 3 to 5. Again, the same summary of the gospel. And it uses the phrase, according to the Scriptures. This phrase is vital because when it says according to the Scriptures, it's the same thing as saying according to God. This is what God says. And how can you argue with God? Basically, it's sort of like Billy Graham when he would preach his evangelistic messages, and he would often use the phrase, the Bible says. And that phrase basically is tantamount to God says. The same here. When it says Christ died, suffered, buried, rose again, according to the Scriptures, God says this because it's according to His Word. Then it continues on, He ascended to heaven and is seated at the right hand of the Father. He will come again with glory to judge the living and the dead. His kingdom will never end. So, first of all, you have the suffering and the humiliation. But after that, you have the exaltation and the glory. Proverbs tells us that before honor is humility. In some ways, you could say before honor is humiliation, because that's really what Jesus endured for us, a humiliation of the cross, not only in its pain, but also in its shame. And while we may see Renaissance paintings of Christ with a nice little loincloth around the middle, there's a fairly high chance that when he was crucified, there was no loincloth at all. It was humiliation. But with that humiliation to the point of death, God honored him, gave him a name that is above every name, and caused him to rise above it all in his not only resurrection, but also in his ascension. So it said he ascended to heaven, and he's seated at the right hand of God.
Faith and the Future with Neil Johnson and Dr. Camille Majdali from Teach All Nations. Find articles, videos and podcasts from Dr. Camille, plus today's and other episodes of Faith and the Future in the Vision app or at vision.org.au.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.